All right. So, as Israel is continuing with their ongoing brutal offensive into the Gaza Strip, just absolutely flattening entire city blocks to the ground, taking out civilian infrastructure and killing countless innocent men, women, and children, we have some U.S. politicians like none other than South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who are calling for this to expand to be a more international war, including a hot war between the United States and the country of Iran. So let's go ahead and hear from this first clip here that I got loaded up that he actually posted on his own account. So this is something he stands by, that he thinks was a good clip for him. And then we're going to follow up with a secondary clip here just in a second. Let's go ahead and hear from Senator Lindsey Graham.
For every Israeli or American hostage executed by Hamas, we should take down an Iranian oil refinery. The only way you're going to keep this war from escalating is to hold Iran accountable.
The only way that you're going to keep the war from escalating is by directly initiating an escalation by bombing Iranian oil refineries. Okay.
How much more death and destruction do we have to take from the Iranian regime? I am confident this was planned and funded by the Iranians. Hamas is a bunch of animals who deserve to be treated like animals. So if I was Israel, I would go in on the ground. There is no truce to be had here. I would dismantle Hamas. This is the best opportunity Israel has to destroy Hamas. Take it to the Iranians. If you harm one American in Syria by using your Iranian militia against us in Syria, if you escalate the war by urging Hezbollah to attack Israel in the north, if Hamas kills one American and Israeli hostage, we're going to blow up your oil refineries and put you out of business. It is now time to take the war to the Ayatollah's backyard.
Okay. So a couple of different things here before I show you guys this even more deranged second clip that I got loaded up here. Let's just address a couple of different things. First of all, okay, when he is referencing Iran in this context, what he's talking about is that, yes, absolutely, it is a verifiable fact that Iran has shown support to Hezbollah in Lebanon and also to Hamas in the Gaza Strip. That's a fact. But whether or not they had anything to do with this recent Hamas attack into Israel is actually being denied right now, both by the United States government, according to the latest intelligence that they have on hand, and also by the Israeli government officials, that, according to the intelligence that they have on hand. So the idea that, like, you know, okay, on the one hand, yes, Iran in a general sense supports Hamas and their objectives and gives them some sort of aid and support, the idea that, like, they were directly responsible for this Hamas attack on Israel is just completely pulled out of their asses. And there were a number of other Republicans who have been saying that this recent $6 billion, $6 billion in assets that were unfrozen by the United States, that is responsible for funding the Hamas attack on Israel, also completely made up. That $6 billion that they're using to blame Joe Biden for this Hamas attack is literally still right now sitting in a Qatari bank account, hasn't even been released to Iran. So essentially they're basically just calling for World War III, or what would be at a scale that would be unimaginable even compared to something like the Iraq and Afghanistan wars from the perspective of the United States, calling for an absolutely massive and destructive war based on made-up bullshit, essentially. Okay, so there's Lindsey Graham for you. And, on top of that, if you want to talk about sort of who has been supporting Hamas, right? If you're not a fan of Hamas, which I'm definitely not by any stretch of the imagination, but you might want to take that up with Benjamin Netanyahu himself and the Israeli government that has actively supported bolstering Hamas and giving Hamas financial support over the last number of years. As I said in yesterday's video and the video before that, the day before, we have quotes from 2019 from Benjamin Netanyahu himself openly coming out and saying, if you are against the establishment of a Palestinian state, of giving Palestinians actual sovereignty and an established statehood, then you should financially and otherwise bolster Hamas, because that will then put a wedge between Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip and Palestinians living in the West Bank that are governed under a different authority. Okay, so I mean, again, you want to attack like Hamas, you want to attack the funding apparatus for Hamas. I think maybe you would start with the government of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, that has actively come out and supported Hamas over the last number of years. So now, with that being said, we should get to this next clip here, which is very short, but honestly just as insane as that first one that we just watched there. So let's hear Lindsey Graham, the again senator from South Carolina, coming out and saying that we are now in apparently a holy war between the United States and Israel and Palestinians and Iran.
We're in a religious war here. I am with Israel. Do whatever the hell you have to do to defend yourself. Level the place. We're in a religious war here. I am with Israel. Do whatever the hell you have to do to defend yourself. Level.
Okay. So we're in a religious war right now. Go into Gaza and level the place. I mean, these are, along with so many other public statements that we have gotten from Republican politicians here in the United States, as well as some statements from Israeli officials as well. These are just calls for genocide. I mean, what we are seeing coming out of Gaza right now is just ungodly. I mean, this is absolutely insane shit that we are seeing unfolding before our own eyes right now. So here from the Associated Press, just to give us a little bit of a visual perspective here is some of the destruction already from some of the bombing campaign led by the Israelis into the Gaza Strip. Now, keep in mind, the Gaza Strip is half the population is children. A majority of the population does not have employment. Okay, this is one of the poorest places in the world. This is one of the most densely populated places in the world. It's just a place that has been effectively held captive as the world's largest open-air prison by the Israeli government, and it is now being absolutely leveled to the ground. And we have motherfuckers like Lindsey Graham who are calling for a religious holy war against the Gaza Strip, as if that has anything to do with the current situation that we are facing right now. Again, you can look throughout the histories, whether it's back in the 80s or whether it's back in 2019 with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli government intentionally propping up Hamas in an effort to try to be a cudgel against the establishment of a Palestinian state and against more secularist and leftist elements within Gaza. That is an explicit reality that they have absolutely no intention whatsoever of discussing, or whether or not you want to look at the current maintenance of an apartheid and an ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people by the Israeli government, the ongoing expansion of illegal settlements under international law into West Bank territories, the ongoing settler terrorism that is backed up by the Benjamin Netanyahu government and by the IDF. I mean, it's like they just completely ignore all of those underlying fundamental realities that Palestinians are faced with on a daily basis and just want to pretend as if this came out of nowhere, as if nobody could have possibly foreseen an attack by Hamas like this, coming. And it's just completely insane and completely ridiculous. And all they are doing is calling for further bloodshed, further violence, and honestly, again, backing up what is essentially going to, it looks like as of right now, be like a borderline genocide of some of the Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip. I mean, keep in mind, again, they have already cut off their electricity. They have already cut off their food supplies and other medical equipment that they would need in order to actually help civilians who are being injured on the ground. They're flattening entire city blocks. They're preparing for a potentially 300,000 troop strong ground invasion of Gaza. Okay, 140 as of yesterday, innocent children who were massacred as a part of these bombing campaigns. That number is obviously outdated at this point. I mean, we've had thousands of people who have been killed during this ongoing process, and we have people like Lindsey Graham who would absolutely never go and fight in a fucking war himself, never send his own sons or daughters or relatives to go fight in a war himself. Okay, somebody who's like, 70 years old at this point, calling to basically get a bunch of Americans, a bunch of Israelis, a bunch of Iranians, a bunch of Palestinians killed for fucking what? I mean, for his own personal political benefit here in the United States, for his own geopolitical imperial ambitions or something like that. I mean, just absolutely disgusting comments here from Senator Lindsey Graham. We also have some other alarming comments coming out of, again, Israeli officials. Here from the New York Post, they say Israeli defense official says that Gaza will be reduced to a city of tents, while a politician calls for the use of nuclear bombs. Here's the direct quote: Gaza will eventually turn into a city of tents. There will be no buildings. The ground maneuver will surprise Hamas, the official said in a stark warning to the terrorist group behind this weekend's assault. And they say, meanwhile, Revital Tali Gottlieb, a Likud member of the Knesset, Israeli's parliament, called for the Jewish state to unleash nuclear warfare, even though Israel has never openly admitted to having nuclear weapons. They obviously do have nuclear weapons, by the way, but I mean, these are the kinds of genocidal statements that we are hearing directly from Israeli officials. I showed you guys the other day, that top Israeli defense official saying that Palestinians are animals and that they should be treated as animals, right? I mean, again, city of tents, there will be no buildings left standing. I mean, you guys can see the images here for yourself. I mean, look at what this looks like on the ground. I mean, absolute just chaos and destruction for the people who are living in the Gaza Strip right now. I mean, just absolutely unimaginable violence and destruction happening right now. And this is only going to escalate. And also keep in mind that because they've cut off their electricity, because they have blockaded the entirety of the Gaza Strip and won't allow anything in or out, okay, and because they have already bombed hospitals, they have bombed mosques, they have bombed shopping centers, they have bombed residential buildings, they have bombed civilian infrastructure like telecommunications infrastructure, okay, we are not even getting the full picture of what it actually looks like on the ground because of all of the war crimes that the Israeli government has already engaged in this ongoing offensive. And one more thing is pointed out here by Dr. Omar Suleiman. He says Gaza is now out of fuel. Whatever is left of their hospital system is about to collapse entirely, with over 1,000 dead, hundreds being children. The wounded now have no treatment, and aid has been shut off from all directions. Without electricity, the few voices from the ground will also disappear, and what little remains will now cut off. Water supply will also dry up. This is genocide. Every voice of conscience needs to raise awareness however they can and demand an end to this now. And I'm in 100% agreement with that analysis. I mean, again, they've cut off virtually everything into the Gaza Strip, which they already had complete and utter control of before this current recent offensive into Gaza. They've cut off their electricity. They've cut off any sort of food or medical supplies getting into Gaza. Again, because of the lack of electricity, you have hospitals that have been operating on maximum 2 days, 3 days of emergency generators that are now going to be running out. You have entire city blocks that are being flattened. You have hundreds of children who have already been massacred as a part of this ongoing offensive. And you have U.S. politicians like Lindsey Graham who are not only calling for them to go in with now a ground invasion on top of the brutal bombing campaign that has already taken the lives of countless civilians and that has flattened Gaza into oblivion, and now are calling for an expansion of that, not just to involve, flattening the Gaza Strip, but also to take the United States directly into a hot war with the country of Iran. And I don't need to tell you guys this, but, think back to the destruction and chaos that was the Iraq and Afghanistan war, and then multiply it by 10, multiply it by 100, and that's what it would look like to actually go to war with Iran right now. So it would be an absolute catastrophe, and you see these motherfuckers like Lindsey Graham coming out and just casually talking about war with Iran as if that's something that wouldn't produce absolutely horrific and barbaric consequences, both for the Iranians, the Israelis, the Palestinians, and for the fucking American people as well. So, I mean, these people are, at this point, just genocidal monsters, and, we're continuing to see some of the consequences from Gaza coming out right now. Again, a lot of it is sort of blacked out because of the lack of resources that exist within Gaza right now. And I'll keep you guys updated. I'm going to have another video later today on Joe Biden's statement regarding this ongoing situation. So, as of right now, I see absolutely nothing but a very nightmarish future for the people who are currently living in Gaza.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying